Gordon the Big Blue Engine is the fastest, shiniest, and strongest engine on Sir Topham Hatt's railway. Every day he pulls the big express. This makes Gordon very proud. One autumn's night, Gordon returned home from a long day's work. As he shuffled into the sheds, he noticed a strange squeaking noise coming from his wheels. He looked around to make sure nobody heard him.
"Thank goodness everyone's asleep,"
sighed Gordon. But not everyone was asleep. In the morning, Sir Topham Hatt came to Tidmouth's sheds. He had very important news.
"The world-famous singer Alicia Botti is coming to Soda for a concert this weekend," he boomed. "Pah," fumed Gordon. "She's just a coloratura."
"What does cauliflower have to do with the famous singer?"
squeaked Percy.
"No, Percy," wheezed Gordon. "A coloratura. It's a singer who can sing very loud notes. I need somebody fast, shiny, and strong to take her to Marin Station for her concert." "A fast, shiny, and strong engine," Gordon puffed. "I'll take her, sir." "Splendid, Gordon. She'll be waiting at Knapford." And he left. Later, Gordon pulled into Knapford Station. Alicia Botti walked onto the platform. "Good morning, ma'am. You look stunning."
"Why, thank you. You're a very kind engine." As Alicia Botti climbed aboard the express, Percy pulled up.
"Hello, Squeaker."
Gordon was caught off guard.
What are you talking about, Percy?" Gordon stuttered.
"I heard your wheels squeaking last night. Aren't you going to tell Sir Topham Hatt?"
"My wheels don't squeak," huffed Gordon. "You're just being a silly little engine."
And he wheezed away.
"Goodbye, Squeaker."
Gordon was thundering down the line.
"Strongest and best, biggest and fastest, and pulls the express."
But as Gordon was puffing, he noticed the squeak came back.
"Bother,"
puffed Gordon. "I don't want anyone finding out about my squeak." Later, Gordon was pulling up to a signal. It was red. He saw that Emily was there.
"Oh dear," puffed Gordon. "Emily's going to hear my squeak."
Just then, Gordon slowed down. He noticed the squeak went away.
"Aha! If I puff slowly, my squeak goes away."
"Hello, Gordon. You're puffing awfully slow today."
Well, Emily, I have a very important passenger on board. I must go slow."
Just then the signal changed and Gordon puffed slowly away. Later, Gordon had to stop to take on coal. Thomas was there. "Gordon," he asked, "why are you puffing so slowly?"
"I have a very important passenger on board, Thomas. I must go slow."
Thomas was very puzzled. Soon Gordon was finished taking on coal and steamed slowly away. Gordon was puffing slowly down the countryside, and soon Alicia Botti got cross. She leaned out the window.
"Why are you going so slow? I will be late to my concert."
Now Gordon felt very bad and didn't know what to do. If he kept going slow, Alicia Botti would be late for her concert. But if he went fast, the other engines would hear his squeak. Just then, Gordon ground to a halt.
"Why have we stopped?"
shouted Alicia Botti. "We must find another engine to take you, ma'am. I cannot go fast." Alicia Botti was confused, but Gordon's driver called for another engine, and soon Toby arrived to take her to the concert.
"Ah, a little tram engine. So sweet."
And she hopped aboard Toby, and he wheezed away. Soon Sir Topham Hatt caught word and arrived at the scene aboard Ben.
"Gordon," he boomed, "why have you stopped?"
"Because, sir," he puffed, "when I go fast, my wheels make a loud squeak, and I didn't want the other engines to hear and think I'm not a really useful engine. Now I feel silly."
Gordon, if you're ever having a problem, you should always tell me. Look, I'm going to send you to the works. They'll fix your wheels in no time, and while you're there, you'll have a nice washdown. And if you're finished in time, you can pick up Alicia Botti for her concert.
Thank you, sir, smiled Gordon, and he raced away to the works. In no time at all, he arrived at the works. Gordon's wheels were oiled and cleaned, and Gordon was rubbed and scrubbed until his paintwork sparkled and gleamed. Then he puffed away to the concert. He arrived just in time. She was waiting at the station. Gordon now knows that if he ever has a problem, he should never be afraid to ask for help.
Toby the tram engine is a really useful and hard-working steam tram. Recently, he had noticed a lot more road traffic than usual on the island, and couldn't help himself but wonder what this would mean for himself and his friends. I'm not saying that the roadways are replacing us. We're still the greatest way to get around our island. They're still getting too popular for my liking. It's not like things aren't already bad enough on the roads. Hopefully we steam engines won't be affected. As much as I don't want to admit, Emily isn't wrong. It seems every day my driver reads the morning papers and there's a report of some kind of incident on the roads. One day it'll be a car crash. The next it'll be raging on the roads. Hello, Molly. Whatever you up to on this morning? I'm taking this rather rude steamroller to help repair the roads. I can't understand why he doesn't like us.
Because you puffballs take up vulnerable space that could be used to make the roads I pave more efficient.
Efficiency can be helpful, but it can lead to its own trouble, you know. Imagine if we were pulling trains miles long and had to be on time.
Not like I would care. If you got in my way, I'd flatten your rails. Hey, tell him, George.
I'd like to see you try. Don't give him any ideas. As the days went by, George worked with Miss Jenny and her team to repair the roads. All the while, Toby observed the behavior of the steamroller and the drivers inconvenienced by the repairs.
Hey, could you go any slower? I've got an interview to get to. And I've got a race to get to. Either live with it or find your own byway. I'll flatten this road as slow as I'd like.
But soon the roadwork was getting to everyone.
George, if you don't let the traffic through, I'll leave you here in the rain until tomorrow. How would you like that? Fine, I'll move.
Silly thing.
Shouldn't you have left by now, little Toby? We all must keep time, you know.
Some of my workers from the quarry are late. Whatever could be keeping them?
A stupid steamroller. All he does is mope and get in people's way.
Reminds me of my uncle. Yeah, we ought to teach him a lesson. Blasted roads. Alright, now we have to replace these old gates and redo the crossing. After that, our job will be complete. Good, I'm sick of working with George. He's just as bad as Max and Monty.
If not worse.
Here's the workman, Miss Jenny.
Where have you been? You're going to make us late.
And a good morning to you as well, Patrick. We're late because that buffoon George blocked the tramway. On purpose. I can't stand him. Then be lucky you don't have to work with him like I do.
Where's James? He should have been here by now.
Him and I were delayed at a crossing further up the track. Some ignorant drivers tried going across that one-lane crossing at the same time and slammed into each other. How thrilling. Just what this island needed. Another crash.
Ready, Toby?
All set. Hey!
You annoying engine! Since when were you there?
Were you even paying attention?
Not the point, box boy. You need to learn to stay out of the way.
Well, you need to learn to watch your surroundings, especially by the railway line.
Thomas's driver went to inspect the damage.
Great. He's cracked Thomas's coupling rods. He can't go anywhere now.
But this train has to reach Knapford Station by tea time.
Don't worry, I'll take the train myself, Thomas. Let your crew cool you off and fix your rods. And so, Toby helped Thomas into Stanley's shed and took the train to Knapford by himself.
Nelson and Isabella should be bringing the last materials to finish the crossing soon, but right now it's unstable. Just stay on your end and wait, George.
Whatever.
But as Patrick drove off, George began thinking.
I'll prove to those engines we're better than them. They can't cross even a slightly bumpy track, and I can roll along a graveled road like it's nothing.
And I'll do just that. If they try to get in my way, I'll flatten their freight cars. Just then, Toby was coming along the line. He was going as quickly as his old wheels could carry him.
You're low on coal, George. Gonna have to cross and get more. Then hurry. Maybe we can teach that railway that they really are no good. That old teapot will stop for us.
Now, of course, any wise vehicle knows not to chance a level crossing. But George was so blinded by his disdain for the railways that he didn't care, and his driver wasn't concerned either.
Nah, come on, I didn't run out of fuel that quickly, did I? You're stuck, you dud.
Then there was trouble. Get out of my way!
I can't!
What do you think you're doing?
I
would have hoped you had known better.
You should have stopped.
You know full well that unlike you road vehicles, we can't just stop whenever we'd like, and especially for Toby. With a train like that, stopping even before scraping your roller would have been almost impossible. Luckily, no one was hurt, but the police were brought onto the scene. Investigation took some time. Alright everyone, our case is closed. You may proceed. I hope you learned your lesson, George. The next day, George was sent away in disgrace and wouldn't be back for a long, long time. Donald and Douglas are twins. They arrived on Sodor from their home country of Scotland years ago to help the other engines with their work. They are very hard workers and take no nonsense, so the others respect them immensely. One sunny morning, Edward puffed up to the engine shed. A new freight car has been brought to the island, and Sir Topham Hatt needs you two to collect him from the coaling plant and take him to Maithwaite Station by tea time. Just one truck? Seems a little silly to have two engines take one truck. He's not a normal freight car. He's a lot of trouble. He won't cause trouble for us. We'll put that truck right in his place. Just be careful, you two. Donald and Douglas arrived at the coaling plant. In front of them was the new coal truck. He was painted black, had the name Hector written on his side, and was much larger than all the other trucks. This is Hector. He's the baddest of the bad. Nobody messes with Hector the Horrid. Oh, is that right? Me and Dougie have worked with many trucks before, and we ain't let him boss us around. We're the engines in charge, so don't think you can just...
Keep away!
Oh dear. Though the two engines didn't want to admit it, Hector was the scariest freight car they had ever seen. Soon enough, Donald and Douglas were coupled up to Hector and set off to Maithwaite Station. In the distance, they saw a red signal, so they knew they had to stop. But as they applied their brakes, they noticed they weren't going any slower. Aye, apply your brakes, Dougie. I'm trying, Donald. Hector's pushing us forward.
I told you, I'm in charge.
Hector, knock it off. What are you two doing? Well, we're trying to.
Trying to cause an accident.
No, we weren't, you stupid truck.
Careful, you two. You could have caused an accident. I told you.
When I get me buffers on you, Douglas was running low on water, so at the next station he stopped to fill up.
Psst, hey.
Look, I'm exhausted. I'm just here to let my fire cool down, then I'm off to work again. I don't have time to talk.
Well, I overheard those Scottish blokes over there talking about you. But if you don't want to talk, then I suppose I'll just...
Wait, no, tell me.
Well, I overheard them saying that your big wheels make you look like a tractor. Hey, but don't tell them I told you.
A tractor indeed, huh?
Hi, hello there, Emily.
Gee, it must be degrading knowing the Flying Scotsman can show you two up tenfold. Hey, but what would I know? I only have tractor wheels.
Hey, what's gotten into Emily?
Hector?
What's with the long face?
Oh, you know why. You're trying to make us look rude in front of our friends. Aye, we respect Emily. We don't respect you. The two were coupled back up to Hector and angrily huffed away. Donald and Douglas were on the main line to Maythwaite Station, but Hector wasn't having it. He bumped the two engines as hard as he could. Hector, cut it out!
The sooner we get to Maythwaite, the sooner we don't have to see you.
You still think you're in charge, huh? Well, check this out.
Hector, no! You're going to topple over!
Rubbish, watch me.
Hector, stop! But it was too late.
Ouch.
We tried to tell you, but you didn't listen. Now we have to wait for help. Later, Percy arrived with the breakdown train. Bust my buffers, what happened? Hector happened! Hector, why would you cause an accident on purpose?
Because I'm in charge, I do whatever I want.
Trucks can be troublesome, but you're the most troublesome truck I've ever seen. Hector, being in charge isn't the same as being really useful.
I have to show I'm in charge.
Why?
Because the other trucks see me as their leader. If they want troublesome, then I give them troublesome. I don't want to disappoint the other trucks, so I have to prove to them that I'm capable of being in charge.
Being in charge isn't as important as being really useful.
I don't like being a bad guy. I really don't. I'd like to be useful, but I don't want the others to not see me as a leader anymore.
Well, if you're really useful, then the other trucks will look up to you and be useful too.
You really think so?
I know so.
The other engines look up to me and Dougie because we're really useful. If you want to be respected more as a leader, then you must show the other trucks what a good leader looks like. I promise I'll do better.
Now let's get you back on the rails. As he was being put back on the rails, Hector the Horrid didn't feel so horrid anymore. Sir Topham Hatt's railway was in a muddle. There had been so many mishaps and incidents that hundreds of rail workers were beginning to resign. With the remaining workforce scattered, the engines found life difficult. Edward's branch line got the worst of all. Brendam Docks was so understaffed that it took hours for mere loads to be unpacked and collected. This meant that Edward had to speed his passenger runs between stations. Edward was exhausted, but tried to keep optimistic. One morning, Edward skidded into the station to find Henry, fixated on something in the distance. Edward whistled hello. "What's wrong, Henry?" Henry snapped out of his trance.
Oh, sorry, Edward. I was just trying to keep an eye on them.
"On who?"
Look over there.
grunted Henry. Edward looked. Far in the distance, beginning closer and closer, was a crowd of people with signs and wavers. Their yelling could be heard for miles as they marched up to the station. The crowd started calling out to the engines. "You steamers are harmful to the environment."
"You're not eco-friendly."
Diesels are cleaner.
"Have you no compassion for the land around you?"
"Your lines go through the forest. You're hazardous to it."
The last comment stuck with Henry. He looked at his buffers. "Take no notice," soothed Edward. "I think your green paint looks lovely against the plants and trees." "Thank you, Edward," smiled Henry. He left to a chorus of insults. With little workmen to intervene, the protesters crowded on the platform. They turned to Edward. "You're too old and toxic to be in service.
You disturb the wildlife around you. You harm the ecosystem."
Edward lost patience. "I may not know much of your viewpoint," he scolded, "but howling your scorns at those who won't listen isn't the answer." "We'll make you listen," called one. This was met with cheers as Edward left the station. Edward, exhausted from the delays, was furious. He spoke to Sir Topham Hatt. "Men and women have been roaming our station, sir. They claim we're harmful to the environment and relentlessly bother us. I propose we keep some workmen in the area where the crowds are the largest. They'll help quiet down the chaos." Sir Topham Hatt frowned.
"We haven't the workmen to spare, I'm afraid. I am well aware of those protesters and the unrest they cause, but you must remember, Edward, that the biggest threat they pose is to themselves. We will put signs up, but the rest is in their hands."
Edward disagreed with this, but he knew he couldn't act against Sir Topham Hatt's will. Signs and boards were put up along the railway lines reading, "Do not proceed." This did nothing to stop the onslaught. The protesters caused havoc all over the island. They'd block the engine's lines and throw rocks and stones at passing trains. The engines felt a loss of morale, but not Edward. Whenever protesters stood on his line, he'd blow his whistle, wheeze steam loudly, and pull right through. Edward was having none of it. Later, Edward was pulling a goods train from the docks. As he neared the station, the driver saw a signalman fiddling with some points up ahead. "What now?" he groaned. "What's the matter?" asked the fireman rudely. "We have places to be."
"Stupid protesters tried to jam the points into the siding, so nothing could get through," replied the signalman.
Edward and his crew went pale.
"Don't worry," said the signalman. "They did jam the points, but to stick on the main line by mistake."
"Phew. Still a problem," considered Edward, "but one we can work around. I, for one, have had enough with these hooligans."
"We all have," muttered the signalman. "Hopefully they'll tire soon."
Edward whistled with agreement and was on his way. When Edward arrived at the station, the driver and fireman uncoupled the trucks and ran him into a siding. They went off for lunch. Edward was very stressed, but happily dozed in the sun. He was rudely awoken. "Are you sure this is a good idea?"
"Certainly. The kettle's unguarded. We'll take it up the branch line and dump it in the sea."
"Yeah." Edward awoke to see a group of protesters huddled around him.
"It's a hijack, then,"
one called. Hastily, they all boarded Edward. Some stood on the footplate holding the handrails for grip. Others crowded into the cab. They pulled the lever and Edward roared into life. Edward was shocked.
"What do you think you're doing?"
he cried.
"Getting rid of you,"
the protesters cheered as they shuffled Edward right out of the yard. Edward rocketed down the line, faster and faster. The protesters were delighted.
"First this one, then the rest. No more pollution once we're done."
Edward was frantic, but he wasn't scared.
"You'll regret this,"
he called. The protesters only laughed. Edward sped past the yards and whizzed through tunnels. Passing engines only saw a blur. Up ahead were the points that the protesters had jammed. Edward saw this and remembered what the signalman had said. He formed a plan. Edward called out, "The points are jammed to the sidings. We're going to hit the buffers." The protesters panicked. "We're going to crash! Stop the train!" The protesters put Edward's brakes on hard as some desperately jumped off the footplate and smashed on the ballast below. They neared the siding. Ah! But it never came. Battered but unbeaten, Edward stayed on the main line as the screeching wheels came to a halt. "Start it up again," the protesters called, but it was no good. Police cars surrounded the scene and sized up the situation. The protesters had been beaten, and Edward was very relieved. Sir Topham Hatt spoke to the policeman. "These men are charged with grand theft auto, Topham. They'll be taken to court, don't worry."
"No, leave them with me. I'll handle them."
Sir Topham Hatt spoke kindly to Edward.
"My, your quick thinking saved the day."
Edward smiled, but he seethed in pain. "My brakes were screeched on, sir," he said merely. "They're ever so sore."
I believe a trip to the works is in order. For a hero, that's the least to be done."
Edward was delighted. "I must say, a good rest doesn't sound bad to me." Edward was taken to the works. He was fitted with a new set of splendid brakes and felt the best he had in weeks. When he returned home, Edward found Sir Topham Hatt waiting for him.
"I'm glad you're back, Edward. I would like to apologize."
"For what, sir?"
"For not listening to you, of course. You've managed the delays well, and I should have taken your word about the protesters."
"I understand why, sir," sympathized Edward. "There weren't enough workmen to perform my idea."
"Not anymore."
Sir Topham Hatt smirked. At that moment, a group of men dressed in workmen's clothes walked up to Edward and Sir Topham Hatt. Edward recognized them as the protesters. "You hired them as workmen?" he spluttered.
"This may not be their life's passion," explained Sir Topham Hatt, "but with the alternative being one of, less freedom, I believe that these former protesters will be more than glad to fill our gaps. Isn't that right, lads?"
"Ready to be really useful,"
one stuttered. Edward smiled. There was peace at last. I think you'll be happy to know that Edward is back working on his branch line without delay. The new rail workers, meanwhile, pull their weight on the railway. They might not be the most humble of workmen, but know never to protest against steam engines again. Steam engines, they believe, are quite rebellious too.